Hello and a warm welcome back to the Pitch Side Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the BSB. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the podcast, of course, which you can listen to on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. Follow us on social media. I'm at Side PSP on Twitter, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram, and join us always for more on the road to our first K. Welcome to episode 149. Kicking things off in Saturday's action, of course, in recapping Saturday's action, we go to Spain and we kick off with Laliga, of course, the hottest title race probably in Europe at the moment, continued in another episode of it yesterday as Barcelona hosted Atletico Madrid. 0-0 it was at the Camp Nou, but let's be fair, this was a far more entertaining game than the score might suggest. You really look at the score of 0-0 and you might think this was a boring game, a dreadful game, a defensive, conservative one. I mean, for the first 15 minutes it was, but then I think it was amazing. It was a pretty interesting one, tit for tat stuff, end to end really. Circumstances affected both sides tactically. Both had a player go down injured early on in the game. Thomas Lemar went down injured for Atletico, Busquets went down injured for Barcelona. I think both sides started the game looking to do certain things tactically, but of course circumstances forced them to change their plans. I thought Busquets' injury affected Barcelona more, as it opened the midfield really. I mean, it caused a chain reaction of sorts. Busquets was out. Then, of course, you had De Jong certainly dropping to fill his spot, and then you're going to have someone like Messi dropping deeper to take the ball, and that really created sort of latency in the Barcelona lineup. It's a bit of a slow build up to the ball. They couldn't really get the ball up quickly, and that affected their creation, of course, in the game. They didn't create a lot in the first half in particular. Atletico pretty much were really, really dangerous in the first half. They were pretty offensive, surprisingly offensive, I would say. In the first half, they created tons of opportunities. Ter Stegen made a load of saves, of course. The defensive aspect of Barcelona's game wasn't good in the first half, to be fair. In the midfield, I mean, they targeted, I think, the spaces behind the midfield and behind Busquets in particular, with Neymar and Correa running in behind a couple of times, really, and almost scoring on a couple of occasions. But you just know that if Atletico didn't score those chances, Barcelona are going to come back at them in the second half, and that's what happened. Barcelona came at Atletico in the second half, as Atletico started regressing a little bit more, as they usually do, really, in those kind of games. They regressed a little bit more. Barcelona created glorious chances in their own right in the second half to win the game, but they couldn't. It just felt that Atletico accepted the draw by the end of the game. Diego Simeone made the changes that you expect him to make, with getting Kondogbia on and playing the defensive part really, and moving into a more defensive shape. Of course, Joao Felix. A point I wanna really focus on a little bit. Joao Felix is a player you bought for 126 million euros, and that is not a cheaper price, by the way. Surprise, surprise. When you keep him on the bench like that, this is the kind of game where I would think Joao Felix should start, really. A game where there is spaces to move into, and where you need someone like him to pick passes. I mean, I would have preferred maybe a 3-4-1-2, where he is the one behind two, where there's Suarez and Correa maybe in front of him, and you have Joao Felix as someone who could move him, as a dynamo behind him, who could move them and could find those spaces. I mean, I'm not going to say that if Felix started, the game would have been different or Atletico would have scored, but certainly he would have added so much more dynamism and so much more movement, I think, and so much genius to the middle of the park for Atletico Madrid and to the attacking efforts. Barcelona again missed some glorious opportunities in the second half. Atletico Madrid tried to play on the counter, and by the end of the game, it was, both teams, I think, accepting the fact that they drawn 0-0, but it was more of a panic attacks in the last couple of minutes for Barcelona. They missed a glorious last chance thanks to Ousmane Dembele, who didn't add a lot. I thought a couple of individuals in Barcelona had some terrible performances yesterday. Mingueza, who was substituted, I think who was substituted early on in the second half, and rightfully so, I would say. He was subbed off for Ronald Araujo. He was probably Barcelona's worst man on the night. I think, aside from Ter Stegen, you could not really pinpoint a Barcelona player that was truly great. Like, you could not really talk about someone like, De Jong, who wasn't that good. Busquets, for the amount of time he played, he was fine, but I think, being injured inside 30 minutes doesn't really help. I thought Elias Moriba, his substitute, was fine. It really gave us a good glimpse of what he could become in the future, the potential that he has. Gerard Piqué, I think, was out of it, really. It was a game of chess for the most part. But again, it was more entertaining than the score suggested. However, the biggest winner, I think, of this game, obviously and surely, is Real Madrid, because it gives them an advantage against Sevilla, because if they win, they're going to go top of the table no matter what, because they have the advantage over Atletico Madrid, and they have the advantage over Barcelona in head-to-head. So they win, and they go top of the table, joined Atletico Madrid, and ahead of them, of course, in head-to-head matches, so that won't matter really, and they will have no problems in that whatsoever. So that was the pressure on Real Madrid ahead of the big game against Sevilla, of course, on Sunday, and that would give them, I think, a pretty good boost after the exit from the Champions League to play against Sevilla and to continue fighting for La Liga title. As far as Barcelona and Atletico are concerned, this is going to be a dent in the armour, I think, for both. Obviously, the loser, if one of them won, the loser would have been damaged more. But obviously, the fact is, when for Atletico Madrid in particular, this is going to be like shooting themselves in the foot again. This is another time where they shoot themselves in the foot and where they play like they just contend for a draw, which shouldn't be the case at this point. Shouldn't be the case in these kind of fixtures in the league. In this stage of the league, you shouldn't be content for just 1 point. You should be looking for all the 3 points. You should be looking for the win. Atletico Madrid play Real Sociedad next week, while Levante, or in the midweek, that is, while Levante host Barcelona, of course, in the midweek before Atletico hosts Osasuna again, and Barcelona host Celta Vigo in the weekend. It's going to be quite a terrific end, I would say, for La Liga in the terms of the title race. On Sunday, as we mentioned, of course, the big game or elsewhere before we go in La Liga, of course. Yesterday, Real Sociedad, Deportivo Alaves drawn against Levante 2-2. Cadiz defeated Huesca 2-1, and Athletic Bilbao drawn against Osasuna. In fact, it was Osasuna forcing Athletic Bilbao to share the spoils, of course, in that game on Saturday. Getafe Eibar opens the action on Sunday. Valencia versus Real Valladolid as well. Villarreal hosts Celta Vigo. Sevilla, of course, travelling to Valdebebas to face in Real Madrid, and on Monday it is Real Betis versus Granada. It's still a very, very hot title race in Spain, and as usual, we'll obviously wait and see how things are going to develop. From a league where the title race is the hottest thing going to the Premier League, where the top 4 race is surprisingly the hottest thing going, or the only hot thing going, really, in the Premier League. We know pretty much who's going to be relegated at this point, and we know the champions, so it's all about pretty much the 3rd and the 4th place, because we all expect United to be safe in that second spot, and nothing is going to happen to them in those last 3 fixtures. So yesterday, things kicked off on Saturday with Leeds United facing Tottenham, and this was yet another bad performance, I think, from Tottenham Hotspur. They lost 3-1 to Leeds United, to Marcelo Bielsa's side. Another shambolic defensive one for them. I think, it certainly does a lot of damage to their top 4 spots. They had hopes. I mean, they had certainly slim hopes of being in the top 4 early on in the season. Now, 7 points of Leicester at 4th now. Spoilers, of course. 1 point behind Liverpool. I mean, the best thing they would dream of at this point is finishing 5th, which is going to be probably the last point of contention in the Premier League at the moment. But again, with those kind of performances, you cannot really expect Tottenham to play for the top four or get the top four. Obviously, VAR strikes again. Harry Kane had a goal disallowed for like the thinnest of offsides. Really, I don't understand how VAR works. I still don't think the line system and the way they draw the lines and this mathematic kind of manifestation of VAR is not exactly working. It's not exactly convincing me. I mean, it hasn't grown on me like certain things did with VAR. It hasn't grown on me, these line system that they use in the Premier League, and the way they calculate the hair and the foot and the finger and the opening or the opening part of the boot and something like that, and opening other parts of the body. They count them in the VAR system. I don't really understand it. It doesn't grow on me, and it never will again. Yet, of course, it wasn't about this kind of narrative. That goal came in the middle of a first half that was dominated by Leeds. Simply put it, Tottenham had. I mean, it was certainly a simple story to tell. Leeds United took the lead hardly. Tottenham played on the defensive, scored a goal, but again went 2-1 down at half time. Then you have a second half where Tottenham had a better opportunity to score and to get themselves back into the game. Yet it was Leeds who scored from the defensive mistakes from Tottenham opening themselves up, and Rodrigo Moreno scoring for Leeds United the third, giving them a really good push. They are 50 points at 9th. Obviously, they're picking up form as of late, and the second half of their season in particular has been brilliant. The whole season has been really, really good, considering they've just been promoted from the Championship, the return after 16 years of the Premier League, but they were really, really good, I would say, overall. And for Tottenham, I think this is going to be a transitional season next season. I mean, I certainly, one of the biggest things to focus on with Tottenham is the fact that Harry Kane may not be staying if they don't make it to Europe. And I understand him. The guy wants to play in high echelon of football. The guy wants to win trophies. So you understand him. You have to really understand his ambitions. Sheffield United, surely to be relegated, of course, later down the season. They lost to Crystal Palace 2-0. Eze scored twice, or assisted in the game, and scored the second goal, assisted Christian Benteke's early on in the second minute of the game, and scored the second goal in the 88th minute. Was man of the match. Obviously, he's a brilliant player, by the way. I love watching him. He's one of the most talented players Crystal Palace have at the moment, and I would say he's even surpassing Wilfried Zaha as the most important man in Crystal Palace at the moment. He's really putting on some brilliant performances. He's low-key one of the best youngsters in the Premier League. Somebody who gets overlooked, I would say, in those discussions of Rookie of the Year, maybe in favour of the likes of Phil Foden and Mason Mount and Bukayo Saka and all of that. But I think Eberechi Eze is someone brilliant. He's really brilliant. I just need to watch him play. He's so tremendous for a young kid. And then we come to the biggest game, of course, on Saturday. It was Manchester City versus Chelsea, a dress rehearsal for the final, a preview for the Champions League final that we're going to get on the 29th of May. We don't know if we're going to get it in Istanbul or not, because of the current situation. Of course, the English FA officially made a demand for the UEFA to move the match to Wembley, to allow fans to be there, and obviously we will see how UEFA is going to be responding in the next couple of days regarding this situation. But it was not City's night, let's put it this way. It was not City's night. The game was pretty conservative in the first half until the goal at the very least. Both games rotating their squad, making changes at the very least, not rotating exactly, but I think Man City made more changes than Tuchel. There was no De Bruyne, he was rested, Riyad Mahrez and Foden were on the bench, and for Chelsea it was Kai Havertz not there, Mason Mount, who apparently felt a knock, but Thomas Tuchel decided to rest him anyways, just to keep him fresh for the rest of the games. So the first half was pretty boring for that game, I would say. I didn't really enjoy it until the goal. Again, both sides were pretty conservative, maybe trying to not make so much effort, really, to open themselves up for the other team. I mean, the game matters, really, from point of view of Chelsea, of course, looking to secure some top 4 spots, of course, and try and get themselves a guarantee to go to the Champions League next season, even if they don't make it and they don't win the final in a couple of weeks' time. Until the goal, of course, coming from an unfortunate error from Christensen that saw him being injured, of course, and subbed off Zuma to come in. City scored the goal later on in the first half, and they had a glorious opportunity to make it 2-0 as Aguero missed a penalty. I mean, it wasn't a wise time to play a Panenka for Aguero, and definitely not to play it that way. That was pretty embarrassing, I would say. He, of course, apologized on Twitter for making that decision, and certainly this goes down in the file of the horrendous penalty record that Man City have. They really don't have a good record when it comes to penalties, and I think Guardiola should be seriously considering Edison Moraes taking the penalties next time. The second half was a little bit better, but that miss proved really, really costly for Man City as Chelsea turned up the gear in the second half. They forced City back and pinned them to their defence, and they were really quite quick in the transition, particularly on that left-hand side where Benjamin Mendy is. That side was breached in the second half. Like, Benjamin Mendy was like being attacked by the likes of Pulisic, Hakim Ziyech, Reece James, Azpilicueta. Like, he wasn't there. Like, wasn't even there. Hudson-Odoi joined the frame late on in the second half. Of course, he was subbed on for Hakim Ziyech late on, and he had a goal disallowed after Timo Werner got like 3 goals disallowed, like 2 goals disallowed. During the game. He's really, really unlucky. And the first one that was disallowed is pretty much, to be fair, his best finish, like his best pure touch since joining a Chelsea club. They were more dynamic in the second half. They made all sorts of runs. They made all sorts of movement. Man City's, sort of second side, felt different in the midfield with no Gundogan or De Bruyne. Of course, Gundogan and Foden were subbed on in the second half, trying to sort of save the game in some ways. Alexander Zinchenko was brought on for Benjamin Mendy, but this only made things worse. Chelsea scored the second goal in the 92nd minute from Marcos Alonso, thanks to a Timo Werner assist again from that left-hand side, which even Alexander Zinchenko couldn't really protect late on in the game after it was breached for the first goal of Hakim Ziyech, thanks to an assist from Cesar Azpilicueta. Obviously, the game is only delaying the inevitable for Man City. It's only delaying them winning the title and celebrating the trophy. But for Chelsea, it's very, very massive on so many levels because it boosts their top 4 credentials and, of course, helps them now overcome Leicester. They are now third on the table with 64 points. And also, it helps them, it boosts their morale ahead of the Champions League final, of course. It gives them an edge of sorts because they think we beat this team twice, why we shouldn't do it 3 times. Third time may be the charm. This was an average performance for Man City, I think, by design more than anything. But it doesn't help, again, when you have someone like Mendy being breached for the whole game by a Chelsea attack. It really felt like an average performance from Guardiola, and it comes at the wrong time again. And this is not about the league again. This is not about the league. This is about the Champions League. This is about the Champions League final being previewed here. The dress rehearsal went south for Guardiola, and certainly, he will try and review some points ahead of that eventual final. And in the end, of course, Liverpool kept their hopes alive in the top 4 spots after defeating Southampton 2-0 at Anfield. Finally, they won at Anfield. It is, my goodness, this was quite the victory, quite the achievement, I would say. They should be feeling good for Liverpool because they dominated the game. They had most of the chances. I mean, they really created a lot, albeit it was, again, a hard game despite what looks like a domination for Liverpool. Southampton still threatened them on some counter-attacks, but they settled it late, and it won't matter for them because the only thing that would matter is they still hold on to the top 4 hopes in the Premier League. They have the 3 points intact finally, with Thiago Alcantara scoring, Sadio Mane scoring, coming good finally after a bit of a drought. And, again, a victory at home, which felt pretty rare for Liverpool this season. And obviously, they will keep on going in their quest for the top 4. The last 3 games are going to be so crucial. These 9 points that are going to be left for them are going to be amazing. Add to that, of course, the game in hand that they still have against Manchester United, which will be played in the midweek on 13th of May. Before we move on to the Bundesliga, let's quickly go and check out the Serie A. Of course, 4 games were played yesterday. Mostly uninteresting, really, but I think in terms of the top 4 as well, they really matter. Napoli went second momentarily, at least, in the table by beating Spezia 4-1. Victor Osimhen coming good from the early bad form that he has all season, scoring a brace on the day. Of course, assisting Hirving Lozano for the 4th. And definitely having a great performance, I would say, for himself. Of course, Victor Osimhen again. He didn't hit the ground running, despite the promising potential that he had for himself over the course of the season, but definitely now he's hitting his best form, and probably next season he would be a great asset for Napoli. He scored 10 goals over the course of the season, with 5 of them coming on in the last month and a half or so. 6 of them coming in the last month and a half or so. So imagine playing like 15, 16 games and only scoring 4, but then you score 6 in the last 7 games for you in the league. That is quite a transformation, and again, this is a good coming in form for Victor Osimhen that would maybe help Napoli clinch a top 4 spot in Serie A. Elsewhere as well in Serie A, in round 35, Udinese drawn 1-1 against Bologna. Rodrigo De Paul made it 1-0 for the Udinese side, and then Riccardo Orsolini from the Sport equalised in the 82nd minute. Inter defeated Sampdoria 5-1 in a great victory lap for them. The newly crowned Scudetto champions, of course, winning the title last week officially. They crowned themselves, and they had, again, I wish it was with fans, but obviously a 5-star performance from them. Roberto Gagliardini opening the scoring in the 4th minute. Alexis Sanchez having a brace on the day. In between them, of course, there was Keita Baldi's first goal for Sampdoria. Then the 4th goal for Andrea Pinamonti, making an appearance, of course, as a sub for Alexis Sanchez. Then you have Lautaro Martinez making scoring the 5th goal for Inter Milan. There was no Lukaku in the starting lineup, of course, or it was on the bench. Obviously, didn't need him in a game like this, and it was a pretty comfortable victory, of course. The questions start maybe being asked from now, how Inter Milan are going to be playing next season, when they will have, obviously, European football to play with, and Champions League football will be it will be there next season for them. How Antonio Conte is going to deal with the transfer market, who's going to be leaving, who's going to be coming in. A lot of questions are going to be asked about Inter, but of course now is not the time, maybe to answer a little bit down the line. We'll talk about those kind of situations for Inter Milan. Fiorentina in Florenza managed to defeat Lazio 2-0. And Lazio, of course, finished the game late on with a red card as Andreas Pereira got sent off. But the damage already has been done. Dusan Vlahovic made it 2-0 for Fiorentina, scored a brace on the day. He continues his incredible form in Serie A this season. He is a tremendous striker. He's one of the best. In fact, he is probably the 3rd top scorer in Serie A at the moment. He scored 21 goals. He joins the likes of Lukaku, joins the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of the scoring charts of Serie A. Certainly, he is one of the brightest strikers in the Italian league, and definitely someone who, who would you think a lot of teams would compete for his signature in the season. Certainly he was 3rd top striker in the season behind Romelu Lukaku. Actually joined with Romelu Lukaku in 21, so it could be 2nd this season behind Cristiano Ronaldo with 27 at the top of the charts. That would be quite a brilliant performance from them. Fiorentina, of course, with this victory, deny Lazio an opportunity to get closer to the top 4, of course, which is going to have some beautifully important games, some great games to define how the top 4 are going to be shaped. On Sunday, Genoa play Sassuolo, Benevento play Cagliari, Hellas Verona play Torino, Parma play Atalanta, who had a chance to go 2nd again at the table if they win. Roma face Crotone, hopefully for them a game that will bring them back to form, and Juventus, of course, host Milan in a game that is very, very important for the top 4 hopes in Serie A this season. From a league where the champions were crowned last week to a league where the champions were crowned this week, and finishing off with the Bundesliga as Bayern Munich finally took the title home this week after defeating Borussia Mönchengladbach and hammering them 6-0 at the Allianz Arena. The only thing bad I wouldn't say about this game is the fact that they got a red card at the end, and that Tanguy Nianzou, only 3 minutes after getting on the pitch, he got sent off of for, I would say, a last man challenge. I don't really think there's any debate about this. I mean, the tackle itself wasn't harsh enough, but definitely the fact that it was a last man foul and Birlimbolo was on the goal by that time, it was pretty much understandable why he did it. But again, that is only a bad thing about this game, that I would say. Elsewhere, Bayern Munich just completely smashed Borussia Mönchengladbach 6-0. Lewandowski scored a hat-trick, up in his goal tally to 39 goals. He's sure to break his Gerd Müller record with 40, obviously, and definitely that record is going to be broken next week when Bayern play Freiburg away. I mean, supposedly you would think they would break that record away. If not, he have the game against Augsburg in the last round to do it, so there's all the chance in the world that we may have 42, 43 goals record for Lewandowski that he might want to break next season even. So that's the only thing, again, that's the biggest takeaway from the game. They completely smashed Borussia Mönchengladbach 6-0, and an inform, I would say, Borussia Mönchengladbach as of late, trying to make a late search for European sport, but now I think officially they only have Leverkusen to overcome, if they can overcome, and that looks like a very, very hard situation at the moment. Elsewhere, of course, again, they become champions. Nothing new, really, with 31 points, with 31 titles in Bundesliga, not points. They finished 10 points now ahead of Leipzig, who lost against Borussia Dortmund in a dress rehearsal of another final, but it is the German Cup final, a game where Borussia Dortmund were really good for the first half. They were really well organised, well drilled, defensively solid, scored 2 goals, took the lead. Jadon Sancho had a terrific performance. He stepped up with Marco Reus and Thorgan Hazard to replace the absence of Erling Haaland. They were pretty effective in that. But they opened themselves up in the second half. For some reason, they were pretty open. They conceded 2 goals thanks to Lucas Klostermann in the 61st minute of the game, of course, scoring in the second half. And then Leipzig equalised thanks to Dani Olmo in the 77th minute. And it was a pretty nervy ending as Leipzig went on and on and on. But Borussia Dortmund managed to sneak in and get a 3rd goal thanks to Jadon Sancho once again, really getting into form as the season coming to a close, and maybe he would be a great potential player for Borussia Dortmund if he stays next season, because United obviously are going to be still hunting him and Erling Haaland, and maybe they will get one of them in the end of the season. An important victory for Dortmund, I would say, to keep them close and to get them to the top 4 spots momentarily, albeit before the game of Eintracht Frankfurt, between Eintracht Frankfurt and FC Mainz. Of course, that's going to be great to watch, really, considering that Frankfurt have all the pressure on them to get back into the top 4 spots. A team that won't get the pressure to get into the top 4 spots is Wolfsburg, obviously. They managed to defeat Union Berlin 3-0, a defensive solid performance again from them, and accompanied by a great offensive performance, Josep Brekalo scoring a hat-trick, being the hat-trick hero of the day, and helping Wolfsburg into a great win to keep them in 3rd spot with 60 points. But that spot could be taken by Dortmund if they slip in the next couple of games, of course. Werder Bremen drawn 0-0 against Bayer Leverkusen and finishing the game with 10 men, of course. A result that, Leverkusen would be fine with. They would accept probably their playoff spot in the Europa League, considering the dip in form that they had since Christmas, where they were top of the table, mind you, ahead of Bayern Munich, and they were competing for the title, and we were talking all sorts of praise about them. But at the moment, it seems like we're talking about a mid-table team, and that's what's happening for Leverkusen. That is how bad their form dipped this season. And then we end off with the saddest thing about the Bundesliga, really. Schalke 0-4, not even finishing with a good farewell tour to the Bundesliga, losing 4-2 against Hoffenheim, despite having 2-0 lead at the first half, thanks to Mark Oath and Shkodran Mustafi. Kramaric equalised or brought the game back to a half deficit from a great free kick, given up Akpoguma scoring the 2nd goal, Baumgartner making 3 and Ellis Bibo making it 4. That was all in the space of 20 minutes. Schalke were destroyed in the second half. And, again, it is sad to see a team like Schalke go down like that from the Bundesliga, and definitely we hope to them to come back soon to the bright lights of the top division in Germany. This Saturday, of course, action was pretty interesting in top of the table. Sunday's action is pretty interesting at the bottom of the table. Köln hosts Freiburg on Sunday. Eintracht Frankfurt hosts Mainz, an important game for Eintracht Frankfurt for the top 4 spots, and for Hertha Berlin, they face Arminia Bielefeld. Of course, there's only 1 point behind Hertha Berlin and relegation battlers at the moment, so any bad result now will be pretty interesting for the end of the season. Definitely it's something to keep an eye on in the Bundesliga. That's it from me for this episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, help us reach the first K, enable notifications to receive the updates of these podcast episodes, listen to them on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. Follow on social media. I'm existent at SitePSP on Twitter, PitchSitePod on Instagram, and until next time, I will be seeing you soon. Goodbye.